Good afternoon, everybody. Can you all hear us?
Can you hear us?
All right, excellent. What an amazing day. And even better to end the day by hearing about Pfizer's story on how Pfizer is embarking on their ERP modernization with minimum risk, maximum impact. I'm Ashish Khandelwal, partner with IBM, and along with me I have Chris Dougherty. I'll let Chris introduce himself and kick it off.
Sure, thanks Ashish. I'm Chris Dougherty again. I just changed job 2 months ago, so the title just doesn't roll off the tongue anymore. But prior to this, I was the co-lead for the S4 implementation. So I'm happy to be here and excited to go through our journey with you. We'll go to the next slide there, Ashish. So just a little bit of a background for us. About 55 billion, I think now. This was 2023. I think we've gone down a little bit, and since then we're around in 2024 dollars. But you can see some of the highlights here. 125 countries, 42 plants, 81 terabytes of data that we had to look at. This system's been around since 1997. I think we started on 40B way back when. Multiple upgrades in between, and we hadn't really done anything technically with the system since 2016 prior to doing this S4 implementation. Quite a bit of complexity there, a lot of interfaces, 1,100 company codes. We'll touch back on that later. And pretty complex processes. So if we go to the next slide there. So our journey. Again, we started in 97 with R3. In 2010, we were acquired by Pfizer. So we were Wyeth prior to that. And at that point, we decided to roll out SAP globally. So from about 2010 to about 2021, we were doing our global rollouts and consolidating from all of our edge, what we called edge systems, or legacy ERP systems, onto the central instance of Pfizer's SAP system. So we are a global single instance. We pride ourselves on that. It's something that you see very rarely. You see hear a lot of people about consolidating. We started that way. So it's a pretty proud accomplishment. We started pre-work in 22, so we took about 6 or 7 months roughly, I think, of just getting some of the work that we could do ahead on our ECC system out of the way. So going to business partner, cleaning up obvious coding things that just aren't compatible when you go to S4, just to name a few. We also did a proof of concept, if you heard about that earlier. So that's when we first went in and looked at how is the tool going to work for us. We did a bake-off prior to that, and SNP won out that bake-off, so we were very happy to see that happen. We went live in August of 24. Very little business disruption, on time, on budget, really no issues to speak of with that. Today, we're what we call the innovation phase. So one of the things that we had decided as a team, we had never done in the past, was, okay, we're not going to give you a lot of new features and functions. We didn't go completely as a technical upgrade, but we only did what we had to do to support new processes within ECC or within S4. So activating mandatory Fiori apps as an example of some of the things we had to take care of, but everything else we said, hey, we'll do this later. And we budgeted it and we planned for that. For the future, we're in discussions about RISE with IBM and with SAP about how do we do that, what's our roadmap. So well, we'll see how far down the road that is. That's a point of debate among us at this point in time. Global Big Bang. You probably don't hear that very often. We looked at phasing this out, and Ashish will talk about that in a few slides. The squeeze didn't make it worth the expense at the end of the day. And we weren't sure we could keep our timeline if we were continuing trying to roll out different countries, and all the dual maintenance and dual work across all of our various business units just didn't make sense at the point in time. Minimal business disruption, a lot of processes. Next slide. I think this is yours, Ashish.
Yep. Thanks, Chris. So it wasn't a slam dunk decision to go with Bluefield or Rapid Move or hybrid approach. I mean, Chris mentioned back in 2022, we did some pre-work. And before even 2022, we started looking at what would be the right way to move to S4. From 2020 onwards, so 2020, 2021, we looked at whether we should do a brownfield, just bring in everything, low risk, just do a tech upgrade. That's what we have been doing so far, and just move to S4. The fastest way, cheapest way, get to S4. But then now we bring in all the data. I mean, Chris talked about we had 1,100 company codes, of which 50% have been divested. Do we really need all the data? No. I mean, there's no benefit in bringing the data, not even bringing the data of the company codes that are no longer active, but also the active company codes. We don't need to bring in all the historical data. We have 25 plus years of history. So brownfield slowly was taken off the field, and we looked at greenfield. I mean, maybe we do a transformation with greenfield, only bring in the data that we want, but then we really had a lot of niche solution built into our ECC. I mean, this gives Pfizer a competitive edge in the market, and we wanted to keep that. So how do we keep our investment while only bringing what we need? So that's where we'll start looking at hybrid approach. 2021, 2022 is when we started looking at hybrid approach. We looked at multiple tools in the market. SNP stood out in terms of the number of countries that we had to implement, number of modules that we have in scope. It stood out, so we decided to go with hybrid with SNP. The next decision was, should we do a Bluefield with transformation, or should we do a Bluefield with less transformation, more transformation or less? So that's where the transformation continuum comes in. And the decision was, let's do what is the least risk to the company. I mean, Chris mentioned we'd say 100% revenue going through the SAP platform. There was no chance of error. I mean, the continuity of the environment, the criticality of the environment coming up within a certain amount of time was the most important, with the minimum risk, minimum change to the business. So we decided to go with the left side of the spectrum of doing what is only mandatory. So look at FSCM, the business partner, the credit management, the settlement management. So only look at what is mandatory, only deploy those. Anything that was not mandatory, we can do it later, we shelved it off. But at the same time, how do we ensure the business was okay with the approach? Because they were going to stay with this whole transformation program, 18, 19 months to go live, and what do they get out of it? So the first quarter of the implementation is when we work with the business to say, what do you really get out of it on day one? And then what can we do for you after we go live? And Chris talked about the innovation phase that we are in right now. That innovation phase, the planning of that innovation phase, the scope of the innovation really started back in Q1 of 2023 itself. So while we started the project in 2023, it went live in 2024 August, we planned all the innovation that will come later in Q1 of 2023 itself. So business knew what they were getting out on day one and what they will get out of S4 in a year after going live. So that's the approach we took. Business was happy, digital was happy, so we moved forward with the left side of the spectrum with the rapid move. So what is really the rapid move? I think most of you know about it, right? So it's creating a shell, right? So we copy the production into a shell. We do some transformation in the shell because there's no data. You can change some chart of account. You can change the company code. So you can change your. You can make some changes in the shell when there's no data, and then you bring in the data later on. Now, Pfizer being a validated industry, so we created a shell once. We qualified that shell, and then we started creating all our environments, our dev, our quality, all our production from that shell. So that was the approach that we took. Of course, the other approach is to always create the shell as part of your data migration, and then do data migration. That's an alternate approach. But Pfizer being a validated industry, we decided to create the shell once. The heart of the solution was the CrystalBridge, which we used for data migration, and then for data verification, we used Synity's DSP tool. The overall data migration timeline was 54 hours, and I'll come to where we landed up with. I mean, if you can see here, it was less than 50 hours. I'll tell you why, but shortly. So when we started off the program, right, so before even January 2023, the project was launched. Before we launched the project, we did a POC with SNP's CrystalBridge solution to see really how long will it take. Set a baseline. All right, so the baseline came out about 200 hours, 205 hours. Said, all right, we have the baseline. Now, where do we want to go with? So the first quarter of 2023, then when the project was started, the leadership debated what is the maximum time the business can afford to be under downtime. And we decided it was 90 hours. So we knew where we wanted to go. We knew what was our baseline, which is 205 hours. So now we need to start up crafting what my detailed cutover plan would look like. So we started putting in between data migration, between the uptime, downtime, and all other cutover activities that we need to do. Data was really about 54 hours. That's where we came up with. Again, it was not based on a scientific method, but it was based on a couple of other projects, other clients that we talked to, and from the baseline, and from the window that we had in the production. So 54 hours was our production target for the data migration. We started off with our first mock. We were about 100 and something hours. That again was based on what we knew. So we knew we had some work to do. Second mock, first mock was done on our dev environment. So we built out dev from our production data. The second mock was in another environment, and this we said, all right, before we go into the quality, let's make sure that we do full scope of the data into this temporary environment, and then we will load into the quality. So that's where we really knew how long it'll take. It was about more than 250 hours. So we are back on the table. So can we really meet our 54-hour window? We are 270 hours with the total data that we had to migrate. And the approach that we had didn't really would work. Right? So we went back, so looked at NZDT, looked at uptime migration, looked at SLT, looked at other approaches of doing it, and finally decided to go with uptime and downtime migration. That's where we changed the approach. Mock 3, we looked at the top tables, we did the uptime migration, and the remaining tables we did this for the downtime migration, and you can see the difference. By Mock 4, we were confident. We will be able to reach our target. And now it is all about testing out the variables, right? So we had multiple variables to play with. One, our data was growing. So with the growing data, how can we be confident that we'll meet our production target? And second, we had the human factor, because the data migration was a lot of fingers in, okay, you do this task right now, you do this task right now, you do this task right now. It's not fully automated, so data migration, so how do we ensure that now nobody's going on a break while he has to do the task and it delays by 30 minutes. And third is, of course, the defects. So when you fix a data defect, it may result in another issue. So how do we ensure that the defects we fixed, you can rely on it? So we were fixing the variables, 2 variables at a time, and playing with third variable to come up with the window that we wanted to come with. So Mock 4, we were on target, not on target, but we were close to the target. But that's when we ran the 24/7. Mock 5, we optimized further. Mock 6, we then looked at from a data verification perspective. All right, so I got my data migration under control. What do we do with the data verification? So we started off with some automated data verification at Mock 6. By Mock 7, we were there. And now it was all about cutover activities. All the other peripheral systems that we had, kind of setting up the connections, ensuring we disconnect and connect, disconnect to ECC, connect to S4, is tracked and tracked really well. So Mock 8, Mock 9 was all about that. We ran a mock on the production hardware. We ran a mock for the audit purposes, where the cutover data was, migrated data was staged and frozen. Nobody can change it. And then we did the final dust rehearsal. So when we did the final dust rehearsal, we came out to about 54 hours, which is exactly what we wanted in production. When we ran in production, we came out at 44 hours. And everybody was surprised. I'm like, we did so many mocks. We had actually 7 mocks in the plan. We added 4 mocks for all the fine tuning. We had 11 mocks. And how did we save so much time in production? So nobody was able to gauge the network activity that was shut down, because everybody was off the system. So there was nobody in the system, so network was, that we got the entire bandwidth to play with. And that's what really saved us a lot of time. So 44 hours is where we landed up in production. From a data verification perspective, so when we started off, we said, all right, so should we use reports, standard SAP reports? Should we use SNP validate tools? Should we use different tool sets? And then we landed up with Synity's tool set to do the data verification. The first few mocks, it was taking upwards of 50, 60, up to 80 hours of data verification. And then we said, oh, how can we do a fully automated data verification? So that's when you extract the data, you load the data into S4, and at the same time, we're doing a automated reconciliation between the tables that are getting migrated. So we had 6 hours of data verification. By Mock 6, we had 100% automated. The entire solution was automated. So it was all about green light, yellow light, red light. So anywhere it was a yellow light, there was some discrepancy. Red light, yes, a discrepancy where it was not being resolved. And so people were able to just look at the lights and say, yep, and confirm whether they can live with it or do we need to make a change. So at the end of the day, when we went live, we were about 6.5 hours in production. So that included the audit sign-off and compliance sign-off as well. So as Chris mentioned, the entire program was run. It was 21 months total, 19 months to go live, 2 months of hypercare. The entire program ran on time, on budget. At the end of the day, we about 50% of our RISEF was remediated, so about 4,800 RISEF objects were remediated. We did land up creating about 200 new RISEF, and this is where the functionality did not exist in S4. We had something in ECC. How do we keep that functionality in S4? So we had to build it out in S4. So there were about 200 that RISEF that we created. There was about 900 roles that we had to remediate, and then if you look at training materials, about 90 SOPs and training materials that we had to create. Again, this is all based on the mandatory functionality that we went live with. All right, so with that, I'll hand it back to you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Ashish. So these are some more statistics to take a look at here. So we talked about the database shrinkage and what we moved over. So that we went down to about 5 terabytes once it was fully compressed, but that was really 45 terabytes of raw data that we brought over. The time slice for that was 5 years, and only active company codes, as Ashish mentioned, so roughly 400 company codes we took there. The devil's in the detail when you say only 5 years. I think we probably took stuff that was from the early to late 2010 range as well, just because of the continuity of the data that we had to bring forward to keep the integrity there. Substantial reduction in customers. We had never managed customers centrally. They were always decentrally managed. And we were able to write some new rules, get rid of some of the things that were no longer valid, and significantly reduced some of that overhead there. That helped us on the business partner side as well. Transactional history, again, 30 to 5. Company codes down to 400. Vendors, you didn't see as much of a reduction there because we were already centrally managed with vendors. So this was just an opportunity to clean house and get rid of anything that really wasn't active anymore. So pretty much not as impactful, but still good. Materials, again, we had marked materials for deletion forever, never got rid of them. Finally got a chance to clean the house and get rid of that information. I think the real benefit to doing the time slice is we'd have never gotten it done. We had gone from open item managed to non-open line item managed on company codes numerous times to bring those company codes over. And by the way, we went from classic GL to new GL as part of this transformation in one step. We could have never gotten there. Our financial shared services team would have killed us, I think, by the time we had done that. So definitely a huge deal to do the time slice. That was the only way we could move forward with this, especially getting rid of the old company codes and the divested legal entities there. It was nice for us to standardize as well, taking advantage of the new GL. We have a ton of stuff, and we created custom reports to no end. The business was convinced they needed them. They got into S4, they looked at the new reports and said, oh, we didn't need those old reports. We're just going to go forward with S4. So, but we showed them the reports, but they just wouldn't believe it. So it definitely streamlined operations and made things much simpler. Again, it's going from an ECC system, I guess running on Power 10 at the time, to an S4 HANA system running on Power 10. The speed of the system is tremendous. Big improvement over what we had before. So that paid dividends in a lot of other ways that you probably can't just measure, but you know by the seat of your pants that the system is running a lot better, a lot smoother. I think the only thing for us now is that we're accumulating data faster than we ever expected to. So as you probably heard from a number of other customers that have gone live, we used to archive. Now we're really going to have to archive and really go aggressively at that. That would be the one thing that we really need to get a handle on moving forward as we go into the cloud on RISE. I think we can go to the next slide there. Some key challenges, as you can expect, a big global company, a lot of folks who want what they want Our team's been around forever. They were excited to do some new things. So was our partners here. They wanted to do some new things. So managing the scope was critical. We got to a part in the project in like late May. It was probably before that, but we instituted in late May, and we said, no mas, no more changes. You can't do anything. You can fix what's broken, but we're done. And we took that from mid-May all the way through go live, which was early August. I think there might have been 2 things that got through the door, but they went all the way up to our executive steering committee. They approved it, we did it, and we moved forward. So scope management was key, especially later in the time frame. As she talked on the data management timeline, or data migration timeline, that was always the long pole in the tent. As soon as that wasn't the long pole in the tent, we started looking at everything else. But that took us probably better part of a year to get to that point of looking at other things that were happening. But the data migration activities were overshadowing it, and we didn't know what we didn't know. And so we had an opportunity there to fix a lot of other things and start to really compress the timeline down. For us, we have, I think it's 12 SAP production systems, all different areas. So we have an S4 system, we have an MDG, we have BW,
GTS, BW,
yeah,
MDG,
just about everything that SAP
GRC.
makes a product for, we own it. The dual maintenance of that was a nightmare. That was for every project management meeting, every steerco meeting, where are you guys at on dual maintenance? How far are you behind? And having that zone where, hey, we're not going to make any more changes, allowed us to kind of catch up to that. So we needed that breather just as much as anybody else to kind of get all that dual maintenance caught up and get it out of the way. We didn't, in hindsight, we probably should have looked at a different or a more modern tool set. We had an old tool set that we were trying to leverage for this, and it really wasn't fit for purpose, but that's something I definitely would change moving forward. And then, I call this the apple pie slide, for lack of a better way of describing it. You know, people, the right folks, the right partners on this with IBM and SNP. We have a team that's been around for 20 years, more or less. A lot of us were SAP consultants prior to doing all this fun stuff. So I think we have, personally, the best team in the business. Governance, as I alluded to, a really robust framework to keep the changes to a minimum. We just couldn't deal with it at this point in time. I mean, we were constantly trying to de-risk the project to keep things on track. Leadership support, we really saw it when the business was pushing us hard to make other changes and add different things into the system. And I think the only thing we acquiesced on really was a new legal entity that finance and tax absolutely had to have in June. We did that, and you know, that was okay, but it wasn't a lot of testing either at that point in time. And then celebrating the wins. I think you've heard that from Adobe. I think about once a month we get the team together for a happy hour. We did different things at the office. Of course, during Go Live, they were well fed, almost to a fault. I think we all gained about 10 pounds during those 24/7 events. A lot of chocolate, a lot of candy for everyone. And it certainly made a difference, I think. I wish we had the video of our vice president in charge of the group when we went live. He was up on top of a table cheering, yelling. I think he probably could have broken a leg if he had fallen off. But very excited and very well received by the business at the end of the day.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. You know, that is the end of the slide. So I think there are a couple of things, Chris. So maybe, you know, in terms of what will you change if you have to do this again, right?
You tried to prep for me this earlier, didn't you?
I told you. So first of all, if you had to go back and redo it 3 years ago, right? What would you do? And if you have to do it now, what would you do?
So I think I kind of alluded to it, understanding how we would manage the dual maintenance. I think that was really key for us. I think probably loading more data earlier and trying to get into that frame of reference faster. I think that was a real challenge for us. The thing that kind of bit us is we thought we were only using certain parts of the system, and then lo and behold, certain tables were getting used in the background and we couldn't figure out why certain things weren't working. And we basically had to go find all these other tables and bring them across. So really doing the due diligence on how we were working. I think it sounds like SNP's got some new tool sets to kind of get after that, but that wasn't their fault, that was our fault, not really recognizing where things were getting stored. I think going forward, if we were doing it in today's world, I think we would have looked at the data verification differently. I think that was a data point that was 3 years ago. Yeah. I think that would be certainly something we could look at. I think we would take a harder look at moving to RISE or at least getting into the cloud as part of this as well. That is the future. It is where our CTO wants us to be. We're on-prem today with just about everything but a few, I'll say small, but a few systems. Ariba and IBP are really the only two things we have in the cloud today. Yeah. So, that would have been probably the thing we would have done now, because it's now we're going to go back through that whole testing continuum all over again, and probably he thinks it's 2 years. I think it's more like 4 years. So I'm trying to push it out to when I retire, so I don't have to do it again.
We'll do it in 2026.
Yeah, 26, yeah. Don't push my retirement up that close. I think that's it.
Well, thanks, Chris, and thanks, everybody. So if you have any questions, we'll be backstage taking those questions. Yep. Thank you all.